Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Maggie.
Episode 100.
100 episodes.
Oh, look at you finally singing on an
I
episode.
know. I was, you've rubbed off on me.
It only took 100 episodes to get you to sing your words. 100 episodes.
Fireworks.
Okay, this is really exciting for us, y'all, since we're from the South.
Oh, my God.
Well, I'm from the South.
I'm not from the South.
This is a very exciting episode for us.
It's a milestone.
It's a milestone. It's kind of emotional. It's kind of, it's many things. And we're having to record this a few weeks early because this episode actually airs while we are both on vacation, not with each other, with our families. Though perhaps we should have planned a Friends on Fire 100th episode extravaganza vacation.
Oh, what were we thinking? We missed a golden opportunity here.
That'll be for 1,000 episodes. We're going to go through a bunch of things in what we are calling our 100th episode extravaganza, because I didn't know what else to call it. We're going to share a bunch of our reflections this year. We're going to answer some listener questions, read some listener comments. I think Mike even has some bloopers prepared of mostly me somehow, but
yes,
I think that might be just because I create most of the bloopers, not because you're just targeting me with bloopers.
I was thinking about this because I clipped these things off and saved them over time. And then when I listened to all of them, I realized they were entirely of you and I felt bad. But the problem is when I make mistakes, I just stutter and it's not funny. When you make mistakes, you then follow up with like more context about the mistake or you criticize yourself. And so it extends into something that's funnier. And for me, right. It's just, I just stutter. And it's not
and
funny.
a bunch of bloopers of you stuttering. Like, who wants to listen to that?
Right. Terrible episode.
Okay. So should we jump in? The first thing we're going to do is we are going to ask each other each 3 blind questions. We don't know what the questions are. That's the blind part. And just to give a quick shout out, I was inspired / stole this idea from Haley and Justin's season finale episode of their podcast, The Price Avocado Toast. They did this and I love their questions. I might have even taken some of their questions or all of them. And it was really great. So let's jump in.
All right.
Mike,
do you want me to go first?
I think you should go first. Yeah.
All right. I didn't really know what type of questions you were going to ask, so I tried to mix it up. The first one's going to be a little bit lighter one, or maybe not, depending on what your answer is. What's the most annoying thing that I do?
Oh, gosh. That is a good question. I was not expecting this one.
I know.
The most annoying thing that you do? Because
we've now spent a lot of time together, and there's probably something that I do that annoys you.
Okay, is this like an honest, judgmental an honest, judgment-free space?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, sometimes. First off, we have a very good relationship, and I feel like we have like a brother and sister relationship. Like we joke with each other, and we're there's just a lot of banter, and it goes both ways. But I would say, the most. Was the question the most annoying? I already forgot the question.
What's the most annoying thing that I do?
Well, it's a tie between how much you complain about my throat clearing when you having to edit the podcast and get rid of all my constant ahs, or which actually is not really annoying. It's just true. I'd say, when I throw something out at you, like something I'm doing or something I kind of am just telling you / want your opinion on, your first answer or response can be somewhat, the word is not even judgmental, but like harsh, right? Like just a little bit, it makes it immediately I'm like, oh God, I feel bad. I'm not like you'll that just sometimes you are so perfect isn't even the right word because you're far from perfect, Mike, but you, I'm just kidding. You're from a financial standpoint, we talk about this and your needs are so much lower than mine still. And mine are probably, way lower than the average person's, but it's just more natural for you to not want and desire things and to spend very little money and like how much you spend eating out versus me and just other things. And so when I throw something out that I already think that I'm like pretty responsible about, and then you kind of like, just make a little comment or something about it, that's probably the most annoying thing. At the same time, it's why I tell you these things. If I didn't want a response that was honest and kind of challenging my thinking or the status quo, I wouldn't tell you this stuff.
All
so
right.
there you go.
I appreciate that.
That was about as fast as I could get out an answer.
No, that's good feedback. And I will also admit to you that I know I do this, but then most of the time, like 10 minutes later, I'll be like, that was actually a pretty good idea of Maggie's. But then I never tell you that part.
Yeah, that's funny. You are very complimentary, but we'll get into that later when we talk about something else. Okay. What's your second question?
Are we going to ping pong or are we going to go through all three?
This is like an interview. You do all three.
All right. Number 2. What is the biggest change you've made because of a conversation on this podcast? And it doesn't need to be an idea from me. It could be from an interview. It could be from self-reflection. But the biggest change that you've made because of this show.
Wow. So it can't be something that predated this show. But I thought you were going to say biggest change I've made since knowing you. Because I locked in a lot of financial advice from you pre-starting the podcast, which is one of the many reasons we started it. That's a really good question, Mike. You're kind of stumping me. I am rarely at a loss for words.
I'm mixing it up today.
I like it. I'm just going through the catalog of our 100 episodes. I think one of the biggest changes that I have made that actually was a result of a conversation we had, an early interview we had with Jess and Corey from the Pioneers. And then we had many other related conversations with different people, was trying to enjoy the journey and not be as focused on the destination. So just giving myself, I can be very focused and driven, and through your inspiration, I started much more like expense tracking and net worth tracking and things like that. But I also want to enjoy the day-to-day journey, which actually goes back to the most annoying question you asked me to, because sometimes when I'm enjoying that day-to-day journey and you're just so much more disciplined than I am still, right? But anyway, but the short answer to that is I think enjoying the journey as much as the destination, and realizing that I can enjoy the journey and things like that inspired me. I had already asked for some things around part-time work at work, but it further inspired and reinforced my desire to work less until I, hit some magical period when I'm willing to retire.
Good answer. All right. Third question.
I can't believe your first question was asking me for feedback about you. That's a bold move, Mike.
Right. I wanted to surprise you because I really never do this.
I like it.
All right. Third question. You have had a very successful career built around constantly growing and improving and reaching new heights. And I can tell in your day-to-day work ethic around this podcast that you have ambitions for growth. If we were to stop growing our listeners, would you still be happy with this podcast?
I would. And I think we've talked about, that's a great question. I would. And I've had to check some of that behavior in myself this year, even because I sometimes will look at the numbers and I am used to always accomplishing things and growing things very quickly in my life. And this has been, it's a side passion project. So we only have so much time to spend on it. We only have so much time to grow it. And I've got other priorities in my life, like my kids and my job and other things and my husband. And I want to make sure, back to the point about enjoying the journey as much as the destination, I'm okay with this being kind of slow and steady, right? And even if it just was steady, right, and not growing, I'm okay with that because we have hit, to me, what is a critical mass of like, there's not 3 people listening to us every week, right? There's, hundreds of people listening into the, low thousands now listening every week. And that is enough to where I think we've used this phrase before to say, look, if every week I could share a topic that I'm really passionate about and 50 people would show up to listen to that, I would totally show up because it would be a meaningful discussion. If they were engaged and they were continuing to say that it was adding value to their lives, I would 100% do it. So yes, great question. And yes.
Good. Glad to hear it. All right, Maggie, your turn. Ask me your three blind questions.
So funny, Mike. My 3 questions were exactly the same as yours.
No, they weren't.
I'm just kidding. My 3 questions may have been taken from Haley and Justin because I liked theirs so much. Number 1, Mike. By the way, this reminded me that we quit doing Mike's Minute on the Mic. At some point, it just fell off our radar. I know. Yeah. Well, nobody was demanding, like, bring that back. What happened to that segment? So, number 1, Mike. What has been the most rewarding part of the last year and a half of doing this podcast to you?
Excellent question. I think there are 2 equally rewarding but different benefits. The first is that receiving positive feedback from people that I know, but also that I don't know, about the impact this show has had on their life and making changes in their life, which can sometimes be difficult, is extremely rewarding. So to know that we have made a difference in someone's life is rewarding.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the other thing, selfishly, is that to have something that every single week provides intellectual stimulation and enjoyment and satisfaction and just fun is extremely rewarding, because it's rare that people can find an activity that they enjoy doing and have the opportunity to do it so consistently. And so, we always talk about how if we're having a rough day, recording a podcast will cheer us up. And that's really awesome.
Well said. And I'm, as always, impressed by your brevity, Mike. I wholeheartedly agree with both of those things. What's funny is actually, now that I reread my questions, some of them are similar to ones that you asked. I have 4 questions, but as you were asking and as I'm asking, I'm just like narrowing down which are the other 2 I'm going to ask.
Are you also going to answer your own questions? Because that would be kind of on brand for you.
I'm going to. What are your goals for this podcast moving forward?
Oh, another good question. It's similar to my question for you, is that it would, of course, be very rewarding if we extended our reach and got more listeners and were able to impact more people's lives. But on the flip side, getting bigger requires more work, and also work that isn't that enjoyable. And so I think there is a point in the future that I would like to reach where we continue to grow, but before we reach a point where we have diminishing returns on the satisfaction we get from actually creating the show.
Yeah, very well said. God, I'm on the fence between my last 2 questions.
What you do that's the most annoying to me? Because I got a bunch of answers.
I'm not going to ask that question. I know you got a lot of answers. What is the biggest thing that you have learned, or the most valuable thing that you've taken away from these past 100 or 99 episodes?
So I might actually give kind of a bumbling answer on this one, because
I can relate.
But there have been kind of little changes, little demonstrations of benefits or lifestyles that I have begun to adopt. And so I'll list a few of them, because I don't think there's one super impactful thing. The first one started with our interview with the retired toddlers, where they, like my family growing up, do extended periods of time overseas with their kids, but their kids were much younger than when I did it with my sister. But hearing them talk about how they said, money's plentiful if you have the skills to go earn it. And this is the time that our kids really need us. And so the idea that you could do something with your kids much, much earlier than you otherwise thought. And then also, like, down the road, go earn money again if you wanted to. Like, it was something that I hadn't really given a lot of thought. So I think that would be one very impactful thing. I think the other thing has come from you, Maggie, about being much more intentional with money. So my goals have always been around maximizing return, like very much a finance mindset. But there are things that you go and spend money on of high quality that are meaningful to you, or that you bring into your life or take out of your life in a very intentional way. And that's not really been my approach, but something that I have since deployed to great satisfaction. And so I think just seeing your lifestyle and behavior and then like hearing you talk about it has, I think, generated gradual but significant change in the way I think about life.
It's interesting. If I had to recap your answer to that, Mike, I think both of the things you talked about are around exactly what I said, which is enjoying the journey as much as the destination you're focused on getting to. Don't you think?
Look at you being the one who's brief now.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just was thinking it all kind of ties back to the same theme.
Yeah, I agree with that.
One other quick thing we're going to share. Mike, what are your top 3 favorite episodes that we've done over the last 99 episodes, not including this one?
Okay. It's a tough choice, but if I had to pick 3, in no particular order, our interview with my dad and Mark Sullivan, the original Friends on Fire, I thought was awesome. It was fun. They were good to talk to, but also it was interesting to hear my dad talk about things that I really haven't. I knew he did. I lived that life with him as a child, but I hadn't heard him describe it in such a way, and I didn't hear Mark talk about those things in that way. So from a personal perspective, it was very interesting for me. My other favorite episode would be Maggie Wants to Buy a New Car, because we continue to joke about it. And I also thought it was just a very unique approach to hearing your arguments and then trying to break them down. And people found it to be very interesting and helpful. In the end, you still bought that damn car anyway.
No, I bought a used car thanks to you in that discussion. Honestly, I mean, that saved me a lot of money.
Okay, thank you.
And you did change my thinking.
Yeah.
That car only got started being made in 2019. I would have gone even further back if I could have.
Yeah. And then I think my other favorite episode would be our interview with Joel O'Leary, because he's
you have a thing for people with the last name O'Leary.
I do. Like. So he was a cool guy. We had a great conversation. He was extremely insightful and had just a lot of great thoughts on life. And I would encourage everybody to go listen to that episode. But the thing that really made him my favorite was that after we stopped recording, we talked to him for like another hour and a half, and we kept like drinking and talking and just having a really great time with him. He's a cool dude. All right. Those are my 3. What about you, Maggie?
Okay. Well, though I did really enjoy getting to, virtually meet your dad. I have a different list of 3. We have one in common though. My top 3 favorite episodes, Mike, are in no particular order also. Number 90, Why You Don't Need a Financial Planner. Just because it has been like one of the most difficult and up and down decisions and things I've kind of always been on this hunt for in the past 2 decades. And the realizations and kind of the aha moments that I've learned over the years, I'm very passionate about, and was excited to kind of get them out in a hopefully not too passionately angry sort of way during episode 90. My next one would be episode 86, Leaving Corporate America and Changing the Way We Work with Rich and Regular. Mm-hmm. And I've always really liked and been impressed by Julian and Kirsten. But I also, to me, that was it was a special episode because they are one of the very small handful of people that inspired this podcast, in the sense that I saw them really passionate about a topic and going out there and sharing it with the world. And I thought, well, how come I don't share more things with the world that I'm really passionate about? And I've always had different ideas and I never really act on them for just didn't have time. And they've just made some really bold and courageous moves. And I'm super impressed and inspired by them. And I really enjoyed getting to have that conversation with them. And then my third one was also on your list, Mike. And it was episode 61, Habits, Happiness, and Hard Work with Joel O'Leary, also known as 5 a.m. Joel, because I agree. It re-inspired me around getting up earlier. I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. But just how I'm spending my time and creating better habits, and also just happiness. Like his perspective on life and some of the decisions he's made are incredibly contagious. And I also am in love with his daily emails. So we'll put a link in the show notes, but my husband gets them now too. And we often will like talk about them. they're short and sweet, and I just love them. They're one of the few emails I read consistently every day. And if I miss, I always catch up on them.
That was a good list, Maggie.
Yeah. So, Mike, why don't I share what our listeners think are the top episodes? Now, look, caveat on a couple of things with this data. One, some of the order of these is related to how large of an audience the people we're interviewing have, because they also shared it. And so some of them ended up on the top list because they shared it out. And two, some people may have loved other episodes. They just didn't come across them, right? So the name didn't pull them in, or the timing, or, whatever it might be. But with that being said, can we get a drum roll, Mike?
I will add it in post.
Okay. Drum roll.
All right. Number 1 was our interview with Mark Hortzman with Manager Tools.
I love that one because I've been listening to Manager Tools for a long time. They have a very popular podcast. And Mark was incredibly gracious to let us interview him. He's got decades of amazing wisdom. And then also to share it with his audience, which is quite honestly how it became number 1. Mm-hmm. Number 2, the one I just mentioned, Leaving Corporate America with Rich and Regular. Awesome discussion.
Number 3, Adventures in Opting Out with Kate Flanders, who gave us the most brilliant takeaway for this show.
The context.
Maggie, yeah.
I don't talk a lot.
You don't talk a lot. You
share
share context.
Yep. I will always.
We must bring it up every episode. Yeah.
Yeah. I bring it up every day in my life. Number 4 was also one that was one of our favorites. Habits, Happiness, and Hard Work with 5 a.m. Joel, the one that we both just mentioned.
A conversation with the original Friends on Fire.
Mike's dad, check it out.
One I referenced. Great episode.
Your dad making the top 5. I actually hadn't looked at this list in a little while.
Yeah.
Good for him.
He must
have a lot of family and people listening there.
I think he did send it out to a lot of people.
Number 6 is paying off your mortgage is a great investment. Fun discussion.
Mm-hmm. And we've actually gotten a lot of comments about that one. I think it was a unique take on how to approach your mortgage.
Yeah.
Next up, the 2021 financial checklist to ensure you stay on track. This was your idea, Maggie, and a good one. We developed a special Excel file that we have on our Etsy store.
You can also get it for free on our website.
And it was just a good practical approach to how to plan your year for your financial tasks.
I almost listed that as one of my top 3 because I love lists and I think they can be incredibly helpful. So highly encourage you guys to check it out. Number 8, Money Lessons from Tim Ferriss's Tools of Titan. It took me about a year to read that book.
Yeah,
and then
great book.
We finally did it. I think we talked about doing it like when we first started the podcast, and then it ended up being episode number 72.
Well, because you recommended the book and I was like, oh, well, Maggie's going to read it. I better read it really quickly too. And then I was prepared to do this episode for like 11 months, and then you finally got around to it.
Then like COVID hit, there's just a lot of things happening. Yeah, COVID's my excuse for everything during 2020.
All right. Number 9, 5 simple steps to investing. Nothing earth shattering on this episode, but it was, I think, very helpful for people just to take a step back and talk about the basic steps for how to get into the market.
And then number 10 is episode 67, Wants versus Needs, 8 tips for buying less stuff. I really enjoyed that one too, because I think I just love the differentiating between wants and needs. And when you were asking about my annoyance with you, that's another way of phrasing it, Mike, since you said I was going to bring it up a lot. You're really, I still have so many wants, and you're really good at being focused on your needs. Mm-hmm. That's another better way of saying it.
That is a much nicer way of saying it. The first way you described it was...
Oh, well, you hurt my feelings when you knock my wants because you only have needs.
I know, you're right. I deserve
but
that.
It helps my wallet, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. When you look at your net worth chart, you're like, I guess this feedback's okay. All right, so what's up next on this 100th episode Extravaganza, Maggie?
Extravaganza. Part 83 of the Extravaganza is we are going to switch over to some questions that we got on Instagram recently. So this is kind of like a mix of some questions, and then we'll parlay. Is that the right use of the word parlay? No.
Let's go with it.
Okay, into some comments. So first one is Matt Becker from Instagram asked us, biggest money regret. Mike, you go first because I don't know if you have any.
Ooh, That's a good question. I feel like there is nothing that was so devastating that I wish I could take it back. I have made a number of mistakes in investing and saving, but they provided me the opportunity to learn and grow from them. I think I've made a bunch of bad investment choices. I got like really into Bitcoin a few years ago and lost some money, but I learned a lot about Bitcoin and I learned about, my emotional reaction to investing, and I haven't made the same mistakes since, so I would not take it back, but certainly there's a lot of things I can point to. That was a vague answer.
That was a good way of reframing a regret, is like, there's no regrets because you learned something from all of those mistakes. Mm-hmm. I have an actual regret because the amount of money I would have right now would be significantly different. But to your point, I'm still fine and I have learned a lot. My biggest money regret is not investing in basic index funds during the ages of like 20 to 35 when I had additional money in savings and I just kept it in cash and was intimidated by investing and felt like I needed a financial planner and all these things that we've talked about in a number of episodes. That would be my biggest regret. Okay.
All right. Next up, Justin Brownwoods from The Price of Avocado Toast asks, okay, you guys might have mentioned this on a podcast before we started following, and then in parentheses, I think we joined the gang around episode 50 maybe, but how did you guys even get the podcast started? Where did it come from? Good question.
I think you should answer this because we'll say the same story, but I'll take 20 minutes.
Well, I'm not sure if we would identify the same person as coming up with the idea.
Whose idea was it?
I think it was my suggestion.
Here, you want to know what happened?
Sure.
Okay, you're like, sure. It was actually both of our ideas, which is the best of it, because it was your idea that we do a project together. And so the quick version, Justin, is we met at work. We became good friends because we would always talk about money and just because we're both awesome people. And we would always talk about financial stuff. And Mike kept saying repeatedly, you kept saying, we should do something together. Like you had written this book and I was helping you edit it and stuff. And you were just saying like, we'd be really good. We have complementary skill sets. Like we should do something together. And at one point, I can't remember what one of your ideas was. And then I was like, how about a podcast? And then you were like, yes. Do you not remember that that's what happened?
No, I remember wanting to do something, either start like a side hustle together or do some project together. I think that sounds right, though. I think I had tossed around the idea like many years before joining the company that like a podcast was something I was interested in, but I don't think I actually suggested it to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I will credit that it really was like a 50-50 thing of like, you just kept saying we should do something together. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah. Okay. That was a long-winded way of answering your question, Justin, but thanks for asking. Okay, next one. This was a doozy, Mike. So Nina from Instagram asked, when do you guys plan to, quote, retire? Not sure I've heard your life plans yet.
Oh, that's good.
This is the $1 million question, pun intended.
Okay, I think, you know what? I think should I speak for both of us?
Give it a shot.
We are both in a position where we could stop working. However, we both like our jobs and we have fairly good balance and we are finding more and more opportunities for balance in our work. And so I think the short answer will be when we stop enjoying work or find the trade-off of our personal lives too much, we will stop working and retire.
That, Mike, was so much better than how I would have summarized it. I would have spoken for 10 minutes. Well done. Spot on. Couldn't have said it better myself. I literally could not have said it better. And the only other thing I would add is...
Oh, I know what you're going to say. It's not about retirement.
No,
we will stay busy even after we leave our corporate jobs.
That's very true. Okay. Yeah. And we just did a whole podcast episode on that if you want to hear more on it. No, what I was going to say is I would put a highlighter on what you said about we will keep working as long as it works within our lives. But the second it doesn't, we're both out, right? Whether that's a month from now or 3 years from now.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing that we're both pretty aligned about.
Right. So like 7:30 a.m. phone call? No way. I quit.
I always joke, I'm like, anybody looks at me wrong, like I'm out of here. Mike, we had 2 questions about 401ks that were very, very similar. So I'm going to ask one of them, and I think it's going to kind of hit both of them. So Katie from Instagram asked, if I roll over my 401k to a Roth IRA when I retire early, can I withdraw the contributions? And then somebody else was asking about a backdoor Roth while having a traditional rollover money. I can't put it in my 401k pro rata. I didn't really understand the question, to be honest. But let's just talk about 401ks briefly, knowing that this is not a detailed episode about 401ks.
Okay, so 401ks are pre-tax retirement savings vehicles. So you don't pay income tax on them, and you put the money in, and then they grow, and then you pay income tax when you withdraw them. Roth IRAs are the opposite. You pay taxes now, and then in the future, you pay no taxes when you withdraw them. So the benefits of 401k are greater when you are currently in a higher tax bracket than you will be in the future, and the benefits of Roth are greater when you are currently in a lower tax bracket than you will be in the future, or if you just don't want to pay taxes. So the question about, can you roll over a 401k into a Roth IRA? Yes, you can. However, you would pay ordinary income taxes on it. And so that sort of defeats the purpose in many ways. And using it to retire early, Maggie, you and I have had some offline conversations about Roth ladders and that sort of stuff.
The conversion ladders. To be specific.
Yeah, Roth conversion ladders. Thank you. And my recommendation is don't touch these accounts. Like they have a very strong benefit the longer you keep them in there, 401k or Roth. And you don't want to jeopardize your long-term future for some short-term flexibility. I would encourage someone who's interested in drawing down on a Roth to just find a different way to save and grow your money, even if that means postponing your early retirement plans just a little bit, because the withdrawal amounts early in life are not going to be so material that they're going to change your plans that much.
And Mike, I think, you and I, like you said, have had a number of discussions and debates offline on Roth IRA conversion ladders or just conversion ladders. And this is a good example where I love when people say it's not finance, it's personal finance, right? There's a lot of trade-offs and decisions that go into that. And you have a very strong view on exactly what you just said, which is like use your retirement savings vehicles for retirement and capture and save other money in other ways for your short-term needs prior, not even short-term needs, but for your needs prior to retirement. And I don't disagree with you, but I do think there could be some unique situations where people have larger amounts of money and want it short-term and want to quit working to spend more time with their kids. And that might be where they've squirreled away all their money their entire life. And so there are some creative things to do with conversion ladders that make the best of getting access to that money. It's not something that I'd say, we're like detailed experts on either, right? Because it's just, there's certain things that we know more about and that we spend more time doing ourselves. But I'd say there's tons of amazing blogs and amazing content from a ton of people in the FIRE space on backdoor Roth IRAs, which I actually also do. I do a backdoor Roth IRA because I'm not eligible for a Roth, but you can do a traditional Roth and do a backdoor. But there's a ton of blogs on conversion ladders specifically and some kind of creative things to do there. So in that case, I'd say we're not the experts here. Go seek out some of the content from people who are experts in this space.
All right, next question. Sheila from Instagram said, I'm selling my house and don't want to buy another. What should I do with the money?
I love this
like
question.
This.
Yeah.
Trendsetter. I think it depends on how much you need. So, Sheila, if you have an emergency fund and you have all of your short-term expenses covered, I think you need to invest it. But where you invest it is going to depend on your objectives. Stock market's a very easy place to go do that. If you are interested in, getting into the real estate market for rentals, you could use that equity from your house to go buy one or more rental properties, which would generate cash flow. Yeah. So I think the short answer is we'd encourage you to go invest it and grow it. But where that is best for you really depends on your specific situation.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was thinking, Mike, in the sense of I personally would take that money and make sure my emergency fund is fully funded, maybe with an extra pad. I'd put the rest in index funds, or
Dogecoin.
real estate or Dogecoin or real estate investments. And look, if you want to put a little tiny amount in some Bitcoin just for fun, go for it. But don't put any meaningful amount there.
I thought you were going to say, if you want to make a small contribution to Friends on Fire.
Oh, no. I mean, first thing I would do, Sheila, is go buy some Etsy templates from Friends on Fire.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have lots of money left. They're only $3 each. You'll be fine afterwards. We're just kidding. Okay. Our next and last kind of question that we're going to share from Instagram is from What the Fi Guy, who was someone we interviewed. He was right up there, by the way, on one of my favorite interviews too.
He was great.
Top 3 is tough, y'all. He said, love it. Keep up the valuable work. Appreciate the podcast so much. And then he said, I'd be interested in the topic of real estate. And this is a big one. That wasn't like a question, so we're not going to address it. But we will say, I do think we can do some future episodes and kind of some more detailed real estate topics, because Mike and I have even talked about that. That's one thing you've learned a lot about, not through the podcast, but through me this year. I feel like I've been like teaching you some real estate tricks that.
Yes, you have.
Yeah. Thanks, What the Fi Guy, for reminding us.
You did teach me quite a bit about how to manage real estate in the U.S. So up to this point, I did not have any rental properties here. I had not managed any tenants here. So you taught me a ton.
Well, and
I'd like to revise my answer, Maggie. The biggest takeaway I've had from this show is learning about real estate from you.
Oh, thanks. I wasn't fishing for a compliment, but one of the things we will do.
I'll take it.
But I'll take it. Thank you. One of the things we will do is we will do some future episodes. I particularly want to do an episode on like tips and tricks that are rethinking traditional real estate rental practices, because that's a lot of like what I've shared with Mike and his business partner on some of their rental property stuff. Is everybody thinks you have to do things a certain way. Like you can't list a property till the renovations are done. And there's so many things you can do to make more money faster and easier, and also be a great landlord to people. So I think there's some things we'll do around kind of like managing real estate on your own that might be a fun topic, and some other real estate related topics. Another question we got from a listener is on emergency funds. So they said, I would love an episode on emergency funds. I read Mike's book and he recommends keeping your emergency fund in a brokerage account. I'm wondering if he has more thoughts about this, especially post-COVID. Given that in situations like last spring, if you had accessed the money in a situation like that, when the market is down, you would have had to take it at a huge loss versus being able to ride out the market drop. Just curious to hear more about different strategies and get more of Mike's reasoning behind that recommendation. Again, especially after we've all gone through the job insecurity, the market drop, and seeing how we could end up in an emergency situation that most of us never anticipated. Thanks. Really enjoy you all, Mike's book and the Etsy resources. Did you submit that, Mike?
No,
all those compliments
but thank
for your
you
book?
for reading the book and remembering it. I love it. This is a great question.
It is.
This was certainly a great reminder, the market drop and COVID in general, of the risks that you have when your money is invested. This doesn't change my recommendation, though, and here's why. Let's say you had a $50,000 emergency fund in a brokerage account where it is earning and growing. One point is that you would, in theory, be continually adding to this. As you save money, you grow this brokerage account, and it's no longer just emergency fund. It is emergency fund plus all of your other taxable investments. But let's say it was just $50,000. The market tanks. It's now worth $25,000. You are out of a job and you need to spend some money. You would not sell all $25,000 at that point. You would sell just what you needed to pay your immediate bills.
Yeah, you might sell $3,000 off that day.
Right. Now,
that month.
The point that this listener is making is that $3,000 was $6,000 before. So you're selling it at a loss. So that loss is going to help your taxes, first of all, but that's a secondary concern. But then the next month, and then the month after that, and the month after that, the market starts to recover. And so you would be able to see some rebound of that money, but it's also important to remember that an emergency is going to be a low probability but high risk situation. So the chances of another COVID outbreak and market collapse is going to be quite small. And so if you have an emergency fund, you might need to tap into it once every 15 years or something, because these situations are just quite rare. So this would not change my recommendation, But it's a good reminder that these things can happen. You need to be prepared. And that probably means having a larger emergency fund than you think you might need.
Yeah, I think your last comment about a larger emergency fund is probably one of the most important things to protect yourself from unanticipated situation like what we've all experienced in the past year and a half now. But the other thing I would say is, you said this, Mike, but like, look at your situation and your level of risk, right? If you have another spouse that's working and the chances of you both losing your jobs, and then you would get unemployment, and what would that cover? Right. And could you, you could pull back on a lot of things. You wouldn't, emergency funds are for like true emergencies. They're not for living large after you lost your job, because that is not an emergency. So many people could live off unemployment if they lost their job for some period of time, right? And so I think it's balancing the risk. Like for me, I essentially keep part of my emergency fund in cash and part of it in a brokerage fund, right? So I do have some cash I can draw on, but I don't need it all in there, because the chances of there being a massive drop when I need to, again, take small amounts of it, not all of it out, and me actually, the pros of the amount of money I've made over the years of it being in brokerage outweigh the risk, in my opinion. And so I think it's a bold move, even though many people do say to keep it in cash. I think it is a more aggressive approach to keep a big portion of it in a basic index funds, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, because the risk is if you keep it in cash for 30 years, it's worth significantly less than when you put it in there because of inflation.
Like I said during Biggest Money Regrets, that is one of my biggest money regrets. I kept money in cash for way too long. And there were 2 market crashes during that period. One, in this past year, and I don't even know if that would be considered a crash. And then one in 2008, they recover within a couple of years, right? And so, can you get by if you had to during that time and take small amounts of it out at a loss? Plus, it's great for your taxes. So, Mike, we also got comments. These were less questions and more just comments from people on Instagram recently, and thought we would read them. One was, your podcast is great. The content is inspiring and also easy to understand and implement. Your 2 different personalities make for a really engaging show. Thanks for putting it out there. I've been better able to make positive changes in my life with your help. This is why we do this, Mike. That it makes me so happy to hear somebody saying things like that. Not because I want to be like congratulated or anything like that. It's the last part they said of, I've been better able to make positive changes in my life with your help. Like that is why we love doing this so much. And it's what you started off this whole discussion saying, Mike.
So thank you for everybody who submitted questions and for listening to the show. We do this for you, and so it's really special for us to hear back.
Yeah, I agree. So this is an untraditional episode, Mike, but let's still do our top 3 takeaways.
Okay, and then we will leave our listeners with some bloopers of you.
Oh yeah, I thought maybe we'd forget, but yes.
Okay, top 3 takeaways. Number 1, take your big passion ideas and make them happen. We did this when we started the podcast, and we are so much happier because of it.
I said it earlier, Mike, but it is not the first time in my life, but was the first time in a long time that I had aggressively acted on an idea and a passion, and have just been, so happy as a result. Number 2, there is so much value in friends talking to friends about money. It's why we named this Friends on Fire. We're actually doing an upcoming episode on friends talking to friends about money in a more focused topic, but it's just so incredibly valuable, and we cannot encourage it enough. And like I always say, if you don't have friends that want to talk about money, we'll be your friends that talk about money. So
definitely,
just keep coming here.
Anytime you want. And number 3, you guys listening are why we do this. You are awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your support and for you listening to the show.
Yeah, I will just say that, in my own words to follow on Mike, but we really appreciate you guys. We do it for you. We don't do it for us, though. We see small benefits from having these conversations with each other. We really see the meaningful benefit as the impact that it can have in other people's lives and making them think differently about their lives and what's important and the journeys that you guys are all on individually. We appreciate you all taking the time to listen to us and let us be a voice in your life. And I really appreciate all the people who have left us reviews on Apple Podcasts, who have left us comments on Instagram, who follow us on Instagram and other social media platforms. and have engaged with us in some way, because this would be very lonely if we were just kind of out there broadcasting and talking and we weren't hearing back from people. So thank you to everyone who has taken the time to reach out to us. And on that note, if you want to reach out to us, you can always leave us thoughts or questions in a voicemail or a text at 404-981-3370, or you can hit us up on Instagram, and we are very responsive there.
And if you've been challenged or inspired by what you've heard, please rate and review the show. You can also subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. And with that, we'd like to leave you with what you probably came here in the first place for: Maggie messing up and some bloopers.
Could we find one blooper of you, Mike?
Yeah, nice. I'll try to drop one in. All right, here you go. So that's who we are. We are friends, and we like to talk about fire. So what are we doing here, Maggie?
We want to share... You should keep that in there.
The mic was so offended by that delivery. It was just like, I can't even right now, Maggie. I can't even.
What's this thing? Knox gear.
So what are we doing here, Maggie? We decided to do this podcast because we are friends, we're like-minded, and we like talking about money. And we believe that when you talk about money with your friends and family, it opens the door to financial well-being.
Yes. Drop the yes.
God.
Really helps other people find our podcast and helps more friends, blah, blah, blah. Really helps us. Thank you.
So this week we are back talking about adults with adults. And because our mission is to get friends to talk about money, I thought what better way to do that than to invite one of my friends over to our studio to talk about money.
Awesome. I'm super excited. I don't know Adam really well, but I'm excited to get to know him.
You're supposed to say...
Oh, sorry.
Over to our studio. You mean closet?
Oh yeah. No, I forgot. I had so many closet jokes ready. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, let me redo this. This was a softball. I
had a really stressful morning. I'm like,
Maggie,
off my game.
I wrote it in the notes for you.
I know.
All right. So our mission is to get friends to talk about money, and what better way to do that than to have one of my friends over to the studio to talk about money?
By studio, do you mean the closet?
Yeah. Okay. I think you were about to answer sort of the question I want to end with. Okay.
I hope you didn't lose this train of thought, though, because it's really annoying when people interrupt you and you lose your train of thought, which I do to Mike all the
time. No, you lose your own train of thought when you interrupt myself. All right. So what advice would you give somebody?
You can also find us at www.
Yeah, I don't think you need to include the www.
You can also find...
One of these days I'm going to...
do all the outtakes.
I've been keeping all the outtakes, but I want you to see the editing process, because the more every time you do a little, I have to zoom into the waveform, clip out your little, that part. And then keep it going. I mean, it's super painful, Maggie.
What gets measured gets better. You gotta keep that whole thing in, because that's kind of funny when you say. Okay, what gets measured gets better. Quote that.
God.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Thanks, Maggie.
Bye, Mike. Bye. Do a bye again.
Okay. Bye, Mike.
Bye, Maggie.
All right. Well, let's just do it again.
Okay. Bye, Maggie. Bye.
I then get transferred over to the retention department, and they'll be like, well, we really want to keep you. How about we give you this deal? And then I'll take it. Or if there really isn't anything, they're like, when do you want us to shut off your service? I'll be like, and I hang up the phone.
Funny. Oh, my kids are calling. I'm going to have to call back tomorrow. Just kidding. That might have been confusing. Cut that. Hi. Well,
let's do it again.
I couldn't remember how we start. I know. I'm working on it.
Fuck, Maggie. Fuck.
I say so much, and Mike is mad at me.
You say and then you cough, and then you sniffle into the thing. I have to clean all those up.
I'm gonna try to cough and say at the same time. Okay. God damn it. Fuck. I'm gonna start saying fuck instead of
Maggie, you had 5 ums in one sentence.
Fuck me.
Get your shit together.
If it makes you feel any better, I am disappointed in myself.
That doesn't make me feel any better, because I have to edit this.
Let me try to redo that, okay?
No. It will. I will cut it out. Okay. Let's just.
I feel bad.
Move on.
Okay, number 1, a rewarding life really requires passions. I hate the word require, but I think our point is we believe. Oh well, no, I know. I was sort of just like saying this as
don't refute something we put in writing for ourselves. Just change
number
it.
1. Okay.